Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Kaylee Fields, and I'm a business finance major at SWAC. County budgets are complicated with multiple funding streams and restricted uses. Understanding how government money moves is important because informed decisions require knowledge, even if it's just who we vote for and why. The following slides will outline who pays, who controls, who decides how and where money is spent within the county government and its departments. By the end of this presentation, you will have an understanding of where county finances come from, where they go, and will maybe even spot some opportunities for new ideas. This is all about engagement, and the first step is to learn. Oregon operates as a centralized funding system, which means a significant portion of tax revenue is collected at the state level and then distributed back down to counties based on formulas and program requirements. A result, counties like Coos County often function as administrators of state-funded programs, especially in areas like public health, juvenile services, and parts of public safety, rather than fully independent decision makers. It's also important to understand that money doesn't always flow directly from taxpayers to the county. Much of it is routed through the state first, then distributed with specific rules attached, which limits how much it can be used locally. Income taxes, for example, are often returned to counties through state distribution. Property taxes are one of the few funding sources that are collected locally, but even these dollars are divided before the county ever sees them. The total amount collected across all districts is large, yet the county only receives a small portion of the total. Most of the revenue is automatically distributed to schools, cities, and special districts based on fixed formulas. This means that even though property taxes are local, the county still operates within a limited share. The takeaway is that local collection does not equal full local control. The structure of distribution determines how much the county can actually use. This is the most important point to make clear. People often assume the county receives the property tax revenue in the general fund, but it doesn't. Of the roughly 93 million collected in property taxes locally, the majority goes to schools and cities, which dominates how those dollars are used. The county is only a small slice of the larger system, receiving about 7.5 million. So it's important to understand both the scale of the total and how limited the county's share actually is. Think of the county funding as three buckets: local revenue, shared revenue, and grants. Local dollars like property taxes and service charges are the most flexible and can be directed where the county sees the greatest need. Shared revenue from the state comes with some guidelines, so it's semi-flexible. Grants are the most restricted, typically tied to specific programs like public safety or public health. The key takeaway is this: the more funding that comes from the state, the less control the county has over how that money is used. While the county does receive revenue funds, it does not control how much it gets. These are not local taxes. They are state collected revenues that are redistributed back to counties based on formulas set by the state level. These formulas determine the amount, and counties have no ability to adjust or negotiate those figures, which limits local control over this portion of the budget. State grants fund programs like juvenile services, veterinary support, and public safety. But the key point is that this money comes with instructions. These funds are restricted, meaning they must be used for specific purposes defined by the state. The county doesn't decide how to spend this money broadly. Instead, it administers the programs accordingly to state rules. In this role, the county functions less as a decision maker and more as an operator carrying out state-directed services. County services are not funded or controlled in the same way. Some areas like public health and court rely heavily on state and federal funding, which comes with more oversight and restrictions. Others like road and general government are primarily funded locally and allow for more direct county control. Many departments such as sheriff, jail operations fall somewhere in between. State rules also layer over top of federal requirements, and removing state policy does not remove federal obligations. The key takeaway is that each department operates under different funding rules, which directly affects how much flexibility the county has in making decisions. Public health operates on a roughly $7 million budget, with most of its funding coming from the state and federal grants and a smaller portion from local resources. Because the largest programs are funded externally, they come with restricted requirements and limited flexibility at the county level. This means that while public health represents a significant share of services, it is one of the areas where local decision-making is most constrained. One potential opportunity is to better align services with existing county infrastructure, such as integrating certain public health functions within the county jail facilities to improve coordination, access, and efficiency within those constraints. Whether this is possible is to be explored. The jail budget is primarily funded at the local level, which is why people tend to associate it with strong county control. Most of the functioning comes from the general fund, meaning local leaders have direct authority over how the operations are managed day to day. However, that control isn't absolute. State grants and service-based revenue still plays a role, which means outside requirements and constraints can influence how the system runs. The result is a department that feels locally controlled in practice, but is still partially shaped by external funding sources. More local control also means funding is our local responsibility. Courts and prosecution operate under a split funding control structure. While the court system itself is largely funded and directed by the state, the county is still responsible for key components like the district attorney's office, courthouse facilities, and on-the-ground security. This creates a shared system where responsibilities are divided but not always aligned. The important takeaway is that counties support the functioning of the courts, but they do not have full authority to control how the court system operates. Road funding is one of the clearest examples of local control, but also local constraint. Counties rely primarily on local taxes, user fees, and timber-related revenue to maintain and improve roads, within the state playing only a limited projected base role. That means decision-making largely sits at the county level, but the amount of money available is tightly tied to these specific revenue streams that are largely decided by the voter. In practice, county government controls how the roads are managed, but local voters decide how much funding they have to work with. General government is the core of county decision-making, covering commissioners, elections, and administrative functions. Unlike other departments, this is where the county has the most direct authority over how services are structured and delivered. However, that authority operates within a constrained funding model, primarily supported by property taxes with additional revenue from fees. This creates a structured tension. The area with the most control is also limited by one of the most fixed and restrained revenue bases. In county government, control over services and control over funding are often split between local and state levels. Counties are responsible for operating services, managing staff, setting service levels, and handling day-to-day decisions, but the structure of those operations the structure of those services operate within largely defined by the state and then by federal law. State government determines how revenue is distributed, sets programs, requirements also restricted by federal law, and attaches conditions to funding through grants and regulations. As a result, even when a county is responsible for delivering a service, its flexibility is shaped by where the funding comes from. In general, the greater the reliance on state funding, the more limitations exist on local decision-making. County funding operates on a three-tier structure that directly shapes how much control local government actually has. Locally generated money, like property taxes and fees, offer the most flexibility but are limited in scale. Shared revenue, where funding is distributed through state formulas, provides more resources but comes with some constraints. The largest funding streams come from grants, which can significantly expand programs but carry the most restrictions through rules and conditions set outside of county. As funding increases, control typically decreases, creating a trade-off between financial capacity and local decision-making authority. Coos County collects approximately $93.3 million in total property taxes, but only about 7.46 million of that amount goes directly to county government operations, including our jail and district attorney. The county pays the state roughly $155 million in income tax, and all of that is controlled by the state. The majority of funding that supports the large programs, such as public health, safety, and justice, comes from state-controlled sources, often with specific rules and limitations attached. This creates a structure where the county does have some local control, particularly over its own limited revenue, but operations largely within externally defined financial constraints. Key takeaway: the county is responsible for delivering services, but does not control most of the money behind them. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about how money moves between state and county. If you have any questions, there will be a Q&A with Brandy up next.